Hello, my friend. Welcome to the show. That is the Butterfly Effect podcast. I'm your host, Jack, and I'm here with Liam.
Hey guys.
Yes, he's no longer my pet crow. I've promoted
Hey.
him again to co-host the podcast. So guys, Chapter 8 of The Quarry, episode titled Belly of the Beast. We start off with Ryan, Laura, Dylan, Caitlin, and that's it for me and you, right? Potentially Abby, but we got Abby killed. And I suppose they're just reflecting on what to do next, aren't they? In the plan to sort of resolve the whole werewolf curse and things. So, do you want to take a lead on it, like how it played out and what you thought of the various relationship dynamics that were going on here?
Of course, yeah. So, there's a few things to get through, and I think one of the first things we'll mention is that it very much starts off with Ryan and Laura clashing at gunpoint, kind of thing. One thing I quite like is the contrast of Laura's sassiness and determination and persistence versus Ryan's seriousness. So, I love some of the lines Laura comes out with here, where she just says stuff like rude or good showing on the leadership front, and also when she's just straight up oh, shut up. One of the big things they have here is the clash about the fact that Laura wants to kill Chris, and how Ryan, obviously since the start of the game, has been a pretty big defender of Chris Hackett. One thing I'm not sure I like is the fact that you just want to destroy the source of the wolf in, what we'll later learn, which I won't spoil actually, but Chris isn't the original source. But it's almost just like the game really spearheads you into killing Chris Hackett. And I know Ryan does challenge this idea, but he folds pretty easily. And I'm unsure I like this from a Laura point of view. This is just what she's heart set on. I get that her boyfriend's infected and she doesn't want to wait a whole month till the next full moon. But I did find that a little frustrating from a writing point of view that we were kind of directed that way. And another bullet point I've got written down here is the fact that Ryan sort of says to Caitlin, Caitlin, any ideas? And Caitlin just folds nah, this is on you, Ryan. I thought at the start of the game that Caitlin was this leader who was almost a little bit like a babysitter, calling the shots, telling people what to do. And then out of nowhere, it's just almost like they've made Ryan the leader, and it just didn't really make sense to me, considering a few chapters ago he was very lonely and brooding, just kind of sat to himself with his podcasts. So I didn't really get this from a character dynamic point of view. I don't know if you've got anything to comment on with the few things I just said there.
So it's interesting because I had the exact same thing play out in my playthrough. I did choose the uncertain dialogue. I think I've got it listed here. I've put uncertain, curious, and honest. And like you said, that bit with Caitlin, we was oh, what do I do, Caitlin? And Laura completely digs it out, sort of in terms of come on, Ryan, grow a pair. And also as well, your point on Chris Hackett, it actually has some legs, because think about it, you'd assume that Travis, obviously this is going forward a little bit, that Travis does run into Laura again. He does surely know what her plan is, being that to kill Chris Hackett, and yet he doesn't seem to do anything. It's quite obvious that he wants to kill Silas. He knows that she's going after his brother, but there's no real preventing that on his end. There are a couple of points. Maybe it's something we'll revisit when we do chapter 9. So it's a good point. Don't know, is it that they're trying to shoehorn the relevance of Chris Hackett in this plot again? It is one of the things that I do think is a bit of a downer, a bit sort of the fact that that underuse of David Arquette, and they just sort of put him in as the villain. I don't know, doesn't rub the right way for me.
I agree. I think we can kind of just conclude here that the Hacketts are the worst communicators. Travis never mentioned, the origin source whatsoever. At no point did Jedediah and, Bobby explain to the teens running through the woods, oh yeah, there's wolves going about, put this blood on your face, it will save you. No one ever mentions that. These Hacketts are the worst at talking.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously, we are finding plot holes now, aren't we? But it's not even like it was there from the first playthrough. I'd say it's not even like in future playthroughs you sort of sit back and think, oh yeah, why didn't they do it? Sort of sat there from the moment thinking, okay, why wouldn't you behave like this? But anyway, yeah. So obviously, actually, I'll tell you what, mate. One thing you might not know about this. But did you know that Ryan can actually go to shoot Laura in this scene? Like, not kill her, obviously, but I think if you choose all like the adversarial options, like you're completely against her, you know, you're only thinking about saving Chris Hackett. There is actually a moment where she says, "What are you going to do then? Shoot me?" And it cuts to Ryan and it says like pull trigger, or you can sort of like stand down. You can pull the trigger. Think the gun's not loaded or it's not got any bullets in it or something like that, so that's why she doesn't die.
Damn, that must completely fracture that relationship though. That's dead interesting. I'm gonna have to try that in a future playthrough.
Yeah, so I thought I'd let you know that, because obviously, you know, I've started to do multiple playthroughs now, so like here and now, like drop these little things. But by hook or by crook, they end up leaving together, didn't they? I mean, I did choose as Ryan to go with Laura. Did you choose to go with Laura? I know you said that it felt a little bit forced, didn't it?
I did. So, just out of curiosity, because I've got quite a big point to say here, though, mate. I'm assuming Ryan has to go with Laura. I don't think there's a way of dodging this, right?
Yeah, he does.
Okay, yeah, because I just assumed. I mean, if it was the case, fair play to Supermassive if you could branch the story that wide, but you know that would be quite optimistic. So I understand that can happen. Yeah, but story-wise, Ryan goes with Laura, leaving Caitlin and Dylan behind. Now, I don't know if I like this. So 4 reasons I'll name is that I think it kind of fractures the Dylan and Ryan dynamic. It's kind of like it's flowing, and whether you're a fan of it or not, it stops from here. They don't really see each other ever again, and it's kind of like you think that the past scenes might end up being perhaps a little pointless. The second one is I've seen people ship these two from here on out. There are a few people who talk about Laura and Ryan potentially being an item, and I just thought how dumb that potentially is. And I do get there is a little bit of a fun dynamic between the two, especially in the scenes later on where they're in like the basement and whatnot. But I mean, you know, Ryan potentially has a dynamic with Caitlin or Dylan there, and Laura's taken by Max. You know, and you have this whole prologue building up the relationship, you know, and so I just really was confused by that. The third point I have is the fact that from here on out, Laura, as much as I love her, she is my favourite character, but I do think she really steamrolls other characters out of the way from here on out, and I think she steals limelight. And don't get me wrong, I love that she comes in, and I understand the whole prisoner storyline, so she couldn't be in it before. But you've just kind of got 6 chapters worth of characters here, and then Laura comes in and absolutely steamrolls others out the way. So I don't know about you, but one thing I would have done to solve this is not have Ryan go with Laura, and I actually would have preferred if Caitlin went with Laura. This is because obviously you would still have Ryan and Dylan together. Maybe they could have done the garage scene together or something. I'm unsure. But I think Caitlin is completely underused in this game. You know, there's just a moment where you just take a picture of like the island, and then you might sneak around the house and play as Bobby a little bit. But I think Caitlin's seriously underused, and I thought if you brought her with Laura, you could have had like 2 sort of females kicking ass. It could have been a really cool scene in the Hackett house. Caitlin would have got a lot more playability, and you would have built Ryan and Dylan's relationship more. So yeah, I know I covered quite a lot there, mate, but my question to you is, did you like the fact that Ryan went with Laura, or are you kind of in my camp that you thought it was a little odd and there was some missed tricks here?
To be honest, I didn't mind it, for the reason being that in my first playthrough up until this point, probably say that Ryan was my least favourite character. He come across incredibly dull. He seemed to have no chemistry with anyone. He's very guarded. And you know what? That could just be part of his character. Very introverted. He's like, but one of the big things, and this is a thing I'll touch on, Ryan. With other characters in this game, it's a typical thing you'll get in writing of like show versus tell. And I swear that there's 3 times in this game where someone says, "Oh, Ryan, he's this mysterious, brooding loner figure," and that's almost the way that Ryan's characterized in this game, where other people, other characters, they show their traits. They, I think they're like written a little bit better. So the fact that I think Ryan got a bit more airtime, and I think this is where we're gonna change paths a little bit, mate. By no means am I gonna say that Ryan and Laura should be a romantic thing, right? Because I don't think they should. I think if I had to pick in terms of chemistry and in terms of a relationship arc, I think his arc with Laura is stronger than his with Dylan. It certainly was in my playthrough anyway, because with Dylan, it was all Dylan. It was all coming from Dylan, which makes sense because he's into Ryan, right? But Ryan could be bit of a dick to Dylan. I think back to chapter 5, like he didn't tell him the werewolf was outside. Yeah, there's the odd bit, but he also slags him off, like when he says, "Oh, I want to go into quantum physics," and then Ryan's like, "I don't see you as a science guy," and he's sort of getting up in his face unnecessarily. Whereas with Laura, I don't know, something seems to change. He engages in a little bit of playfulness. And funnily enough, in the beginning of chapter 9, if you choose certain dialogue, know that Dylan and Caitlin are actually talking about this, and Dylan says, "Oh, it seems that Ryan is into girls with eye patches and they're confident and carrying a gun and stuff." So yeah, I don't know, like I didn't necessarily mind Ryan and Laura's relationship, and I guess maybe on Supermassive's front, they're very conscious of having pairs of boy girl, like when you think obviously Jacob, Emma, Abby, Nick, and Caitlin, obviously Laura, Max, but then because Max is on the island, it's Laura, Ryan. So maybe it's simply that's why we didn't get Caitlin and Laura going off together, because they wanted sort of a balance up the sexes a little bit. I don't know, but
yeah, potentially so. One thing I will say though is that I guess to me it almost didn't maybe from because I agree about the Ryan points. It seems to be coming more from Dylan's side, but I'd say maybe this was something that is like a Ryan thing, because I think Laura very much is in love with Max. If you think about she's going to all these lengths to save Max from being a wolf.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I just felt from a story point of view, it just seemed a little odd to me that they kind of just lumped these two together, like, for example, someone from the prologue with someone from the cast. And, it's nice to sort of see, a bit of a different dynamic there. But I did sort of think from a writing point of view, it did catch me off guard a little bit. Maybe it's fresh, maybe, I've missed a trick here. But obviously, if you guys have made it this far in the video, let us know in the comments. Like, we might end up doing a ship video, so we'll probably talk about this more in detail. But yeah, very interesting that Supermassive Games decided to switch up the dynamics this way, I found.
Yeah, okay, so then moving on, obviously they head up to Hackett House, don't they? And they talk outside, and obviously they fall through the ground. Very nice, perfectly shaped chasm so that they didn't hit their heads on any rock, and of course it was lovely that there was some water at the bottom for them to splash into. And then of course they both get out the water, and this is actually another point I'm going to raise here, and I suppose I'm going to touch on it in more detail, like when we ultimately come round to do a more comprehensive view of the Quarry and the good and the bad and stuff. But I do find it very strange how certain characters turn into werewolves a lot more quickly than others, So obviously we know that Laura, she gets infected by Max somewhere around, end of chapter 6, beginning of chapter 7, obviously like in her timeline. Then she turns in chapter 9. Obviously, Abigail, again, correct me in the comments if I'm going wrong somewhere. I don't think Abigail can ever turn into a werewolf. And she gets infected in chapter 3. So I really don't get the inconsistency there. And it made me think this, like when they're getting out the water, because, obviously they, the werewolves and that, they get funny in water. And she sort of has a bit of a weird moment, doesn't she, Laura? But I don't know what you think on that, mate. But yeah, honestly, it comes more obvious maybe when you do multiple playthroughs. But certain characters do have plot armor. They just don't turn into wolves until a very specific point.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as you'll learn with my first playthrough, and I've only really played it once, and I've done a bit of reading about what else can happen otherwise, but it is very much the kind of thing where my one playthrough, I didn't really infect that many people, so I don't think I can really comment on it so far, but I do see your point. Definitely a few potential inconsistencies. Obviously very difficult to write, but yeah, it is odd the way she turns kind of thing, especially how Nick can go from being this ill person who goes really aggressive in fighting, while Laura will be still very humane, but she has yellow eyes and becomes a bit of like a really fun badass. So like, not only from a timeline point of view, but from a medical and kind of like, a transition point of view, it's very different as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it almost felt like that it was then became thing to like convenient. It's more convenient for the story for her to turn at this point, and it was more convenient for Nick to turn early. So like, I don't know, that's something I've noticed. But I suppose they fall down into the cave, didn't they, or mine, I suppose, which again another parallel with Until Dawn. And
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, you find a miner's lunchbox, and to be fair, mate, speaking of clues, I've looked at my list, and all I think I've got for chapter 8 is a miner's lunchbox and some like, rum still or something. I don't know if there's anything else on the list.
I found like some scarred flesh at one point later on.
Oh yeah, that's in the evidence.
Yeah, and I managed to find a tarot card down here as well, the Wheel of Fortune one.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So I think as far as the tarots go, I think I got all of them for this chapter. Like, towards the end of this game, my tarot finding got very strong. I'd quite a lot in a row, but we can talk about that in chapter 10 when we go over it and stuff. But yeah, so of course I think this is the point for me where I start to see Ryan get a little bit more playful with Laura, and I think in my playthrough at least at one point I think she says to him like, oh, your whole persona doesn't add up, you're this sort of loner figure, but you're also, I love my camp leader thing, and he's like, oh, I don't fit in the right box, and she's like, yeah, and she's like, why'd you always do that? Why'd you, when someone asks you something, why'd you deflect it? And but this can actually play out pretty differently, which I found interesting. Like Laura can actually ask Ryan like who he's more into. Dylan and Caitlin. I don't know if you had that, mate.
I did, and and Ryan replies neither.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't know if again, like, reading into it, whether that's sort of like a little nod to like Laura or whatever. Like, I don't see him in a romantic way whatsoever, but of course, I think Laura and Max are like, maybe less so Max, but in terms of couples, they are the heartbeat of this game. So it's not like that Ryan was going to get in there at all, at least in my opinion anyway. So obviously, you move forward, you sort of going through and you find the scarred flesh, and I'm pretty sure then find out that the Hacketts were involved in bootlegging or something, which was a complete surprise to me when I first played it. I don't know about you, mate.
Yeah, running tunnels. It's one of those ones where obviously we've had a few sprinkles of like this random, like the Hag of Hackett's Quarry, this circus on the outside, stuff with wolves, and we finally had answers. I think maybe it would have been nice if there was a little bit of like clue for this, because it just felt a little out of the blue. It would have been nice to maybe have like found maybe a clue somewhere at some point about this. Maybe there was, maybe I've missed it. But yeah, But still, though, a nice little bit of context of the Hackett family are really interesting. And I'll cover them a little bit more when we get to the end of this chapter, because there is quite a fascinating scene with Constance and Travis at the end of this. But yeah, very, very interesting. They're bootleggers, apparently.
Yeah, so moving on, we then cut back to Caitlin and Dylan. Obviously, Abigail would have been there, but we got her killed off, mate. And they're approaching the car, aren't they? They're trying to get the car up and running again. And obviously, for me, referring back to chapter 1, I cut the fuel line, and you took the rotor arm, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when they went to the car, the way it played out for me was that, Dylan tentatively opened the car, and Emma used air freshener and sprayed him, and he sort of had a little bit of a thing on the floor. And then they was like, Dylan, it's air freshener, calm down, sort of thing. Which I don't know. I've actually, thinking about it, I do know that scene can play out differently. Like, I think if Emma gets infected in chapter 4, she turns into a werewolf in the car. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did, and it was interesting because I had a tarot that showed me Dylan opening the car. So my catch just fell over on the table and face planted. Sorry about that. But yeah, Dylan was opening the car, so I knew that there would be danger here. So when it was just Emma with air freshener, I was like, oh, okay, was the tarot trying to lie to me or play a bit of mess with me a little bit? So I did feel like something more was going to happen in the scene. And quite like Dylan's acting here, I got a bit of a laugh out of him, overreacting to getting air freshenered when he thought he got maced. Yeah, and then obviously they they have a bit of a get together and a catch up, and this is where they break to Emma what's happened to Abby, right? For us anyway. Yeah. It's quite interesting that Abby can be alive at this point. I don't really know, but this is where Emma can learn that Abby dies, and it's quite an emotional scene actually, because it cuts to Emma and she's got teary eyes and all that kind of thing. I was a little annoyed that they cut the cry scene and they just kind of skipped ahead, because I think it would have been a nice emotional moment from an Emma point of view, because I still think we needed more Emma scenes, so it might have been really good to get an emotional scene out of that. I don't know if you tried to comfort Emma as Caitlin, mate.
I generally can't remember, but I do think you're right, because when you think about it from Emma's perspective, the last thing she did in presence of Abby was kiss the guy that Abby liked and sat down next to him and went, oh yeah, he's good.
So, yeah, maybe she was feeling a bit of guilt there.
So, yeah, she's perhaps feeling a bit of guilt, and obviously given that they're meant to be best friends as well, that's just gonna hit home a little bit more. To be honest, mate, I don't remember an option coming up to say comfort Emma.
So basically, Caitlin is kind of trying to fix the car. Maybe this is because I had the rotor arm, so Caitlin's fixing the car for me. And yeah, you can comfort Emma, and I do, and I say, oh, it was painless, it was really quick. And Emma just looks at you yeah, that didn't help. So I'll say, sorry Emma, I tried my best. One thing I want to add at the start is when Dylan and Caitlin are walking through the lodge. Caitlin mentions about, how she'd love to be at a ski lodge. And I just thought that was a nice little nod to Until Dawn. I know we've criticised that they do it too much, but I quite like the subtlety of that one. They're mentioning how they'd like to be in a lodge right now, and then people who've played Until Dawn are probably sat there thinking, actually, I don't think you did.
Yeah, no, it's true, and they did it earlier on in the game as well. I think it was Jacob and Nick at the shooting sequence. Correct me if I'm wrong though, and I think he mentions a Mikey Washington, something like that, and I was like, oh yeah, nice nod. And you know what? I'm all for that. I'm all for the subtle hints, but as we will address in a future video, I do think that the Until Dawn references and the fact that this game was tagged as the spiritual successor, well, yeah, it was almost taken, very literally. That some of the things were very on the nose. in terms of references, but like I say, I won't go into that too much. So yeah, obviously they then decided to go to the scrapyard to go and find a rotor arm, or to try and find another car.
Yeah, I was going to ask for you, because you cut the wire and you completely buggered the car with the fire. I was going to ask what like the purpose of their trip to the garage was, because for me it was literally just to steal another rotor arm, but for you I imagine it would have been very different.
I think it was literally just to go and get another car.
Oh, okay, so they're completely looking for a car. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, obviously logic would say that you just go back to the lodge and maybe wait the night out, but do you know what I mean? Like, I think Dylan actually says that, and Caitlin's like, well, what else are we going to do for the rest of the night? Let's just go and do it. So that's why they end up going to scrapyard. So of course after that we then cut back to Ryan and Laura, don't we? And they're walking through the basement, and in this scene you have intercuts, don't you? It cuts back to Travis and Constance having a conversation, and let's face it, we haven't really seen a lot of Constance at this point, have we? We saw her sort of at the end of another chapter where she's teasing werewolf Nick in the cage, so we get to see a little bit more of her. And obviously knowing sort of where things go with Constance, how do you feel about her as a character, mate? You know, underused? Are you sort of happy with her contribution in the game?
Yeah, so I mean, what we can do is we can talk about sort of Travis and Constance as a whole here, because it, like you say, it goes back and forth, so it'll be quite difficult to jump back and forth. So I'll mention every sort of Travis and Constance scene up until the point she grabs Laura out. I'll like neglect that till the end. Yeah. But one thing I will say though about this whole family dynamic, very good range of acting. The power here from Ted Raimi and Lynn Shaye is amazing. I love the way that Constance learns about Kaylee passing away, and Constance goes from sad and breaking down to angry and attacking Travis. And I've not been really familiar with Lynn Shaye's work, but what range on her acting! I thought it was incredible, and it's almost like I would have liked to have seen a lot more of her. And I know you can't, because there is a really big range. It's so much wider than the cast of Until Dawn, and you can't cram them in because you need to think about things like pacing. But yeah, really interesting. So yeah, shame that Constance is so absent for a big portion of the game. I mentioned in the last chapter that I thought it was weird that you've got Jedediah and Bobby out trying to protect the kids. Weird as, the technique and kind of their methods of doing that is what they're there to do, while Constance is laughing at Nick. So I was a little bit kind of confused by Constance's attitude towards the whole thing. But I almost get the impression she's like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre style, like sadistic mother that stays at home, and if she was out in the world with a gun, she would probably be straight up killing these kids. She is almost like the evil one, kind of almost pulling the strings, and it's almost like the other Hacketts are quite a lot softer than she is. And I tell you what, mate, like I know I sort of disagreed with the last one, but the more I think about it, I actually quite like the variety there. It gives Constance this weird little layer, and it kind of makes you imagine how the Hackett dynamic is quite different, and potentially there's different ideologies within the different family members. Yeah, I don't know if you'd agree with that, mate.
Yeah, I like, because I do agree. Like, I do sort of see her as almost like the head honcho of like the family. It's almost typical in movies where like there's sort of like an anticipation, and you see like the main villain of sorts towards the end of the game. But yeah, like I get the impression that she is sort of like the most intelligent and almost sadistic, and that's what gives her edge and makes her sort of perhaps the most frightening out of all of the Hacketts. I think Bobby, he's there for muscle. Jedediah, I don't know, I think he's got like some sadistic traits which you do see in like chapter 9 and stuff, but no, there's something about Constance. She just seems a lot more darker to me, and
she's unsettling, and she fits the horror dynamic the best, isn't she?
She is, yeah. And as you say, the acting range, that's another thing. I've said it before, but like the acting in this game, like you can't really fault it. There's a couple of moments where you think, oh, that's not up to scratch, but on the whole, it's brilliant. Like the cast were really good in this game. So
I don't know about you as well, mate, but I really felt for Travis as well at this point. Like I know like he's done a lot of mistakes, and it's taken him this long to find it, and he let the kid slip through his fingers, and then, you know, like, Laura's gone and used a silver bullet on Kaylee. So, like, you know, Constance probably has every right to blame Travis here, but, you know, Travis is getting yelled at, and, you know, like, you witness this son getting yelled at by his own mother, and, you know, she brings up the fact that, you know, he's only got this, like, badge because of the fire, and some cop called Hank died in it. And yeah, like, she's really laying into Travis, and I don't know if you felt for him here, because I kind of did a little bit.
You do? I mean, to be honest, I started to feel sorry for him in that scene in chapter 7 when he's got his back to Laura and he's telling about, you know, the analogy with the well, how, like, he sees his family at the bottom of the well and he's the one at the top. And it's true, because there's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. Like, I can understand, like, why is it just him that seems to shoulder the responsibility for finding Silas the wolf? Of course, Bobby and Jedediah, but, like, she seems to really go in on him. It's not like that. It's, you know, I can see where she's coming from, that it's his fault, but I think it's more grounded in grief, because obviously, you know, the fact that Laura got out and stuff. But he was in a tough position. Like, what's he meant to do? Like, keep these two kids locked up for ages? And, you know, yeah, I think you can see Travis in quite a sympathetic light, actually. So it was a good scene. It was a good way to sort of demonstrate another dynamic of the Hackett family.
Of course. Yeah, that's really great, mate. Are you happy to move on to Laura and Ryan as they find 2 more characters?
Yes. So obviously they walk through. I know in my playthrough, that's the moment they find, like, the rum still, and there's a couple of tarot cards, or 1 tarot card in there, I think. Then you see the ominous red light, and there is a QTE that Ryan, like, I think Ryan can fall over or something if you miss it. I don't know what happens if he does fall over. Maybe you make noise and that alerts Constance and Travis, so you can't go into the room. But anyway, I went into the room. Of course, for me, Jacob was in there, and there's a werewolf, which, to be honest, I did guess it was Nick. You know, I didn't think it was going to be Chris Hackett, because why would Constance, you know, tease Chris Hackett through the fence and whatnot? But this particular bit for me, mate, I mean, obviously I didn't touch the electricity as Ryan, and of course then it's the opportunity to free Jacob, isn't it? You can either abandon him, or you can free him. And for a split second I was tempted to abandon him, because I was like, you know what? You're safe in the cage. Nothing can get in there. If I now go away and kill the main wolf, Nick will turn back in the cage, you'll be in the cage, everything will be alright. But in the end I was like, oh, fuck it, you know what, I'll go and save him. And I just did not expect this to be a puzzle. You know, the whole breaker thing and opening the cage. So I completely fucked up. Saw that it was like, I think there was the number 3 above his cage, and then the number 5 above, like, the main door. So I hit 3, and then Jacob looked at me and went, yeah, good stuff, bro, like, you know, keep focused. And it cut back, and I was like, where's the number 5 lever? Can't see it. So what I then did is I then pulled number 4. So I was like, I don't know what else to pull. And then it opened the door for the werewolf. So the werewolf was then walked out into, like, the middle area of the cage. And then, of course, from there, it was then just sensible to abandon. And I was thinking, it was that moment I was like, right, that definitely means Jacob's dead. Like, at that point, I'd already said my goodbyes. Like, he was gone. Like, so I just had trouble. I wasn't expecting there to be a puzzle in that bit at all, mate. What about yourself?
Yeah, like, so firstly, there's that bit as well, isn't there, where Laura can potentially shoot the wolf next door, can't she?
Ah, yes. I didn't do it.
No, neither did I, and I know what happens. Our good friend Anya's done that in a playthrough of hers. And to be honest, you know, like I don't want to spoil too much for those who are watching it chapter by chapter, but I wish it could add a lot more variety to the story, but it doesn't that much. But yeah, like I was like, yeah, we don't know who it is, and like you say, Constance was tormenting this wolf. It wouldn't make sense that she would do it for her own son, especially considering that she's such a family-based person. So yeah, like I assumed it would be Nick as well. So yeah, I spared her on that front. When it gets to the puzzle, I really like Jacob's dialogue as well, where he's like, yeah, you want to open that door, and then just points at the wolf, and Nick just looks at you and goes,
definitely not that door.
I know I said I hate Jacob and I had him out to be this prick, but the more I play the game, I actually think he's such a fun character, and I really like Jacob. But yeah, like when it got to the puzzle bit, yeah, like I succeeded at it. It took me a lot of thinking, because I think if you look at my gameplay, I actually pause and I have like a bit of a breather, because I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell do I do? Because I agree, like the doors say 3, 5, and 7, and the breakers say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I gathered it was potentially like a mathsy puzzle, so it was like, you know, I hit 2 and 1, and then that made 3, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I think I hit 3 and 2, and that added to 5, so Jacob went out, and he just did a runner. He was like, yeah, all right, I'm gone. So I was like, okay, well, I succeeded in that, and then Nick, or the, you know, the other wolf, was still in the cage, so you know, I was pretty happy with myself there. But to be honest, I didn't really think about the consequences that could happen. I assumed, yeah, Jacob could probably die if you open all the doors or the wrong ones, but I kind of just went on with the game, and I haven't really done other playthroughs, but we'll cover later in chapter 9 about what can potentially happen, right?
Yeah, we will.
But yeah, I was pretty delighted on that front, though, so it's nice to see Jacob got out. And then I guess it comes to the conclusion of the chapter, right, mate?
It does, yeah. So, I mean, what did we learn? I mean, I know we said that we're not shipping Laura and Ryan, but her eavesdropping skills are as good as Ryan's, because she sat there by that trapdoor listening, and I think she obviously makes a noise, and then next thing you know, Constance is grabbing her by the hair and pulling her out.
No one fucking eavesdrop in this game. It is shambolic. Especially because, you know, it's creaky floorboards as well. You can kind of hear her coming, potentially more so than with Chris, you know, going to the door with Ryan. But yeah, obviously Laura's my favourite character, and I was scared at this point. So I ended this chapter kind of disheartened, like really worried for my girl Laura, who's been lifted up, and she's going to get tormented by this Hackett family, potentially the same way like Sally Hardesty was in like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah, that's the outro. Are you happy to move on to Eliza?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I picked the Wheel of Fortune, but I can't remember what the premonition was.
Okay, because yeah, like I picked the Empress. I got the Wheel of Fortune as well, but I picked the Empress, and the premonition I got there was Constance getting chucked against a wall by a wolf, I think after having her neck ripped out first. So Constance has a confirmed death there. So I'm thinking to myself at this point, okay, I could potentially like lure the wolf as a means to kill Constance if, you know, I do need to go against these Hacketts here. So I kind of went into the next chapter thinking like sort of methods how I can use the wolf against this family here. But yeah, no, brilliant. Yeah, very short scene by Eliza here. But yeah, we're gunning into chapter 9 towards the end of the game, mate. I thought chapter 8 probably not the strongest chapter we've had. It's very much like Ryan and Laura heavy, with a little bit of like Dylan, Caitlin, and Emma in there in a very short scene. But it very much probably designed to tee up the conclusion of the game, I would say.
Exactly, it's a moving pieces chapter, isn't it? It's getting people to the places they need to be. Dylan and Caitlin to the scrapyard. Emma, obviously, she's going to be going down into the basement of the lodge now, isn't she? And then Laura and Ryan, they'll be there at the Jacob at Hackett House. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe that we're going to be going into chapter 9 already, it seems.
I know, right?
But yeah, that's everything from me, mate. I don't know if you've got anything else to
Nah,
add.
not really, guys. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Like I say again, please let us know in the comments your thoughts on everything here. We'd love to know. Did you guys shoot the wolf in the cage or enable Laura to shoot the wolf? Did Jacob escape the cage, or did he get eaten by a wolf in there, maybe? Tell us as well what you think about Ryan going with Laura, what you thought about that dynamic. Do you ship them? Do you like the fact that they were together, maybe platonically? Do you like my idea? Should Caitlin have gone with Laura? All interesting stuff, guys. And also, if Emma was ever infected with you in that car, let us know what went down, because I haven't really played it that far and I'd love to know. I love hearing your thoughts and your playthroughs about what your first blind playthrough choices were. But yeah, from my end anyway, thank you very much, guys. As always, all our links are in the description. Come and join our Discord group. You know, there's a fun bunch in there where we talk Quarry next to every day. And yeah, you might, join a community and meet some really cool online friends. Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and we will see you in the next one.
All right, ciao for now, guys.